Please welcome the lovely Miss Kris.
Thank you all for that hearty welcome. It's always a little, I don't know, staticky for me when I start because of the butterflies that float around in my stomach. So thank you. I'm really good at busy. And then being at this silent retreat for 7 days, I'm really good at just kind of like going really slow and subtle. It's the in-between part that can be kind of challenging, the everyday stuff. So this theme, loving who you are, brings up 3 questions for me, 2 practices I want to share, and 1 principle. So the 3 questions are, who are you? Or who am I? What is love? And how do we do that? So I'm going to start with the how because it's really practical. And I'm guessing you've already thought about the what is love and who are you a little bit. So in case I run out of time, I'll start there. And I don't see my notes with my glasses.
Take your glasses off.
Yeah, right. Yeah, but when I take my glasses off, I can't really see you. You're all kind of blurred. So, the principle I'm going to share too is called emergence, and you'll kind of see how that ties in later. But emergence, the Latin root for that is to bring to light, and so to me it's perfect, even though it tends to be talked about just in the scientific world. Okay, so the 2 practices. I had a dream the other day, and I was sitting on a bench outside of Rooted Music, and I was having a conversation with a friend. And it was delightful. It must have been sunny, I don't know. But this old boyfriend shows up, walks across my path, gives a hearty hello to this person that I'm talking to, and then looks at me. And so I turn and I look at him, with all that angst, that comes up with old boyfriends sometimes. And he just stands there and looks at me. And I just look at him. Nothing said. And I feel this kind of cold, impersonal, matter-of-fact kind of energy that's coming toward me. And I'm just looking at it, looking at him, just looking. And then I wake up. And it hit me when I woke up, that's the practice. Turning towards one another. Turning towards whatever's difficult, whatever's lovely, whatever's tough, whatever's in front of you. Turning towards that. And paying attention. Paying attention to the judgments that come up, paying attention to those butterflies, paying attention to the joy. Whatever it is, just pay attention. But turn towards. Liberty taught me that more than anything else was when I lost her. I couldn't shove things under the rug anymore. I couldn't make them go away. I couldn't fix them. But I could turn towards that pain and that angst and be with that. And what was magical was something funny would show up, and there became this beautiful wholeness to it. But we don't feel that wholeness until we pay attention, until we turn towards and be with. So that's a practice that helps us love our parts, love our brethren, family, women, everybody, the situation in our country or in the world, whatever it is, turn towards that and pay attention. So I was in a meeting, and it was a subcommittee meeting for the Valley County Collaborative, which deals with the Forest Service and natural resources. And there were 5 of us, 4 men and me, and we were discussing fire. We had to come up with a position statement for what we thought as a collaborative about fire for the forest. Okay, so we're having this conversation, and there's one guy in the room, and he makes this statement. It's a blanket statement, and he puts it out there, and he says, you can't argue with this statement. It's truth. If you look at the words and you look at the structure of the sentence, there's no question this is truth. And really, when you look at the definitions, we wrestled with it. When you looked at the definitions and you looked at the structure of the sentence, it was incredibly logical. It was true. You could not argue with it on a logical, rational level. Well, so watching this guy who didn't care whether people liked him in the room, he didn't care whether or not anybody argued with him, he didn't care. That impersonal energy, that logical, rational energy was right in front of me, and I watched it, and it was really interesting because as I turned towards that energy, that cold, matter-of-fact, truth-based, this is the way it is kind of energy, I thought, I have a part of me that's like that. I have a part of me that's logical. I used to debate with my ex-husband every single night. We would debate scripture. We would debate whatever the sermon was on Sunday. And I was harsh, I was cold, I was logical. My favorite class in college was logic, and then probability and statistics. So that gives you kind of an idea of how my mind rolls, used to. I think I've softened a little bit over the years. Because relationship matters to me. But what was interesting was as I turned toward that energy, it was like, oh, I have a part of me that's really harsh, really logical, really impersonal. Because I live in my thoughts sometimes. And it's hard for me to get to my feelings. So, loving that part of me, turning towards that and loving that part of me really matters. Because that part of me has something to say. That part of me has something to teach me if I listen. And then I can show compassion to that part. So whatever your parts are, you know, the angry part or the frustrated part or the whatever part, the dogmatic part that just, you know, has to be right or whatever that is. Turning towards that and having compassion and loving that part matters. Because it matters to you and it matters to everybody else. Because it's that energy that radiates from us. So if we're angry at ourselves, that radiates to everybody else. So the second practice is keep me fresh, keep me soft. So there's a scripture that says, it's one of the 10 Commandments. Thou shalt not make unto thee any graven image or any likeness of anything. Another translation says, do not make an idol, no form whatsoever. So history does this. It makes statues out of people or events. It solidifies something. And so when we have a judgment towards somebody or we say something like, oh, she's just that way, we're solidifying that person. Keep me soft. Keep each other soft. Let that person show up and you show up fresh in that moment. And yes, we all have past. And yes, we pay attention. And yes, we can experience somebody fresh like we've never seen them before. Because there's always something we don't know. There's always more to the story. Even in history where we've solidified something, it's this way, and it's this way only. Well, that's not true. It can't be true. We cannot know everything about everything. So, if you're willing, and somebody next to you is willing, touch them. Touch their arm. Do that right now. Just see if they're soft. Keep them that way. Keep them soft. Keep yourself soft. We need that. We need that for each other. We need that in our world today. Be soft. Let yourself be soft. Whatever the hurts are, whatever the struggles are, whatever, turn towards that and stay soft. Show yourself compassion. Show others compassion. We're soft. We need to be soft. Okay. So that was fun. But when you turn towards, notice the judgments. I think we all have judgments. I was at that silent retreat, and it was so funny because there was this person there, and there was a salad bar, and we were all in line, and there were 15 of us, and he just was in his own world with his own salad plate, and he was putting an egg here and an egg here, the slices of eggs, and he was decorating his plate, just so, and taking all the time in the world, while we're all standing by waiting, right? And my judgment was, oh my gosh, would you please hurry up? But then I just stood there and watched him do this, and he was so into his own space, paying attention to what he wanted to do. But it was beautiful, the artwork, that he was making on his plate was just like, he was right there. I need more of that energy. Because I'm usually out here with noticing people and noticing everything and making sure everybody's happy and, doing things. But he was so into what he was doing. And I was watching this and I thought, oh wow, this is really cool. It's a different way of existing. It's a different way of being, and I need some of that energy. So learning to love that and love what I'm used to, loving it all. It really matters. It matters to him, it matters to me, it matters to all of us. It was a wonderful, wonderful retreat. Okay, so those are the two practices. Keep soft and turn towards. So now a little bit about the who. So there's two things that I want to bring up. There's lots to be said about this. How much time do I have, Bill?
12 minutes.
Oh, yay! Normally I just end up shocked that I only have a few minutes left. So I'm glad because I want to spend a little bit of time with some of this too. But the who. So who are you and who am I? There's an individual part and then there's the social aspect of us. So that's how you can frame who we are in so many different ways. But what I want to just touch on is the individual aspect and the social aspect. So as an individual, I've heard it said, and you probably have too, we're a spiritual being in a human body, having a human experience on this planet. That's kind of how I see that individual part. We can see ourselves as being an individual with karma that comes in. We can work on ourselves. We can spend time, spend years working on this individual thing, whatever it is. Generally, it's separate. It's a separate path. It's my path. I'm an individual, right? And I can spend, and I have spent, a lot of time on self-improvement, healing, getting into those old wounds, whatever it is. And yet there's so much beyond that. And so that's what I want to touch on. And that's the principle of emergence that will come up too. But I want to read something. And the reason why I bring up that separateness is that we spend most of our life living that individual separate life. You know, it's my house, it's my car, I speak, I go home, have my life, you have your life. That's kind of how the world functions most of the time. And so we fall into that way of being. So there's a song by Green Day, and I wanted to read a quote from that because I thought it kind of touched on it. It's kind of depressing, but there's a point to it. It says, "I walk a lonely road, the only one that I have ever known. Don't know where it goes, but it's home to me, and I walk alone. I walk alone. I'm the only one. My shadow is the only one that walks beside me. My shallow heart's the only thing that's beating. Sometimes I wish someone out there will find me. Till then, I walk alone. Sometimes I wish someone out there will find me. Till then, I walk alone." So there's some truth to that. We do have that individual experience. We do walk alone in a sense. But there's more to the story. There's more to this life than just that. And that's what excites me. That's what is beautiful, I think, because we're all part of this whole. So, but it's a new way when we step into that wholeness, when we step into the unity. It's different than the way we've always, most of us, or most of the world maybe, has walked their life, walked through life. It's a whole different way of being. So see if you can get a sense of what that is, because it's different. And I'm sure we've all touched in at some point to that unity consciousness, to the unity way of being. But it's very different than how we normally engage with people. We connect, we disconnect. We say hello, we say goodbye. Normally that's how we engage with the world. So I want to see if we can touch into this idea of unity. Just a little bit more in not just a head space, but also just touching in and feeling what that's like. So, unity, that idea of connectedness, that we're all connected, we're all related somehow, we're all one, is a spiritual tradition in most, it's a spiritual teaching in most traditions. In fall of 2011, something called the ninth wave came in, and that's part of the Mayan calendar. The ninth wave has to do with unity consciousness. So this unity consciousness has come in. And so we get to tap into that. We get to touch that. It's here. But it's such a different way of being that we need to shift kind of out of that separateness and move to that sense of unity and being in that and staying in that. And what is that? What does it feel like? Um, and then the other thing is the sciences now that are coming out, and the research is fascinating around this idea. There's a book called Emergence, The Connected Lives of Ants, Brains, Cities, and Software. It's all of it. And the sciences are starting to touch on complexity and emergence and unity and self-organization, things that are being created from the bottom up. To me, that's fascinating. So how do we love together in unity? How do we do that? Not the separate individuality, but really touching into the unity and then living our lives from that place. So I have 3 ideas. Well, first off, emergence. So that's the principle. The one principle. Emergence is the movement from low-level rules to higher-level sophistication. So if you remember, Sophia has to do with wisdom. Okay, I got 5 minutes left. Sophia has to do with wisdom. So again, emergence, the movement from low-level rules to higher-level sophistication. From the book it says, it is both the promise and the peril of swarm logic, or the togetherness. It is both the promise and the peril of swarm logic that the higher level behavior is almost impossible to predict in advance. We can't know what it is. Otherwise it wouldn't be emergence. It would be like an old habit, or it would be something we've already done. It wouldn't be something new. So when we tap into this unity again, it's a different experience. So there's 3 ideas for those of us who love ideas and thoughts, and then there's 3 feelings that I want to share around this. So the ideas from the research in this book. 1, there's no king or queen. We create this from the bottom up. These researchers, these scientists, spent 30 years assuming that there was some kind of a command center, some kind of dictator, some kind of ant queen or bee queen that dictated to all the workers. But the scientists are saying, no, that's not how it works. There's no queen that dictates. How could anyone know everything to be able to direct all that? It was really about the interactions. So if you imagine ants, every time they would pass next to somebody, another ant, they would transfer information through the pheromones. We transfer information through our eyes, through touch, through our repetition with somebody in particular, through the things we learn. We do the same thing. Okay, so there's no king or queen. Even our cells. It's not just the DNA that creates the being, the physical being, the person. It's not just the DNA. Every cell talks to the neighbor cell. And they transfer information, they communicate. And it's through that communication that that body is created. There's no central command. There's no dictator. It's up to us in a sense. We get to create this. And we don't know what it looks like because how could we? It's emerging. It's coming. Okay, so that's the second part of that. We don't know, we can't know the next thing. There's no 5-year plans in the ant colony. But it works. They make it work. They've solved some of the riddles. They know how to put the garbage area far enough from the food source They know that. They do that automatically. We do things automatically too, just because. We transmit, and then the third part is we transmit all the time. So those are the scientific ideas and principles that are starting to come through the sciences, which I find is fascinating. And so the feeling piece of all of this, because there's a feeling experience, a tangible experience of unity. And I'm just going to read these because I'm out of time. But we don't have to do this life by ourselves. We really are here together. And the support for Zeba going through that, the support for me, Danelle, the support for whatever our issues are, is here. Not just with each one of us, but it's here in the planet, in the world, in nature. So part of the feeling piece of the unity is that support, that dependability of it. It is so incredibly dependable. It's strong and it's expansive. And then when you tap into that or touch into that whole, which is fascinating, if there's a particular issue or person that is giving you trouble, anxiety, whatever, when you pull yourself into the wholeness of all of a sudden, that one particular person or that one particular issue is really small. It's not like this big, huge thing anymore. Because the big, huge thing is the unity. And so when we can stay in that, the one particular problem isn't quite so prickly. Because we hold it together. We hold it in the whole. And then the last one, there's a tangible sense of play. It's fun, it's creative, it's new, it's fresh, it's soft, it's magical, it's radiant. And we all become radiant because we're in that. When we touch the divine, it touches back. And there's this aliveness and this energy and this beauty that's beyond anything and everything you can imagine. But we have to step into it. We have to find it. And if we don't know where it is, we have to ask, where is it? Show me. Touch me. Make it real. Because it's real. So to me, that's so exciting. All right, and it's electric. Okay, so loving who you are. It's so much easier when we do it together in this unity than me being an individual working on my own stuff and being by myself. And I mean, I just don't like that anymore. I really like being part of that divine presence with all of you. That's my favorite. So turn towards whatever it is. Take a breath if it's hard. And touch in with compassion and grace. Because it's all part of that whole. Keep each other soft. Keep yourself soft. Don't solidify people with your judgments and your frustrations. Keep us soft and touch into that unity. So just one last quote from that book, Emergence. There is emergent behavior in the system when individual agents pay attention to their immediate neighbors rather than waiting for others from above. I'll read that again.